Welcome to Decoding Cultural Layers, where stories turn into insights and everyday life unfolds in unexpected ways. I'm Gafdilius. Let's peel back the layers together. What is evil? Can it be taught? Can it be learned? Or is it something we are born with? This question may sound simple, but it opens the door to one of the most complex debates in human history. In philosophy, the first thing that is pointed out when approaching this question is the following. If we cannot define what evil is, we cannot know whether it can be learned or taught. Because without knowing the definition of something, it is impossible to discuss its origin. The problem is that we often cannot define evil. We can only talk about what is evil. That is why evil is usually equated with violence, inflicting pain, causing harm, destroying. Yet violence and evil are not the same thing. Not all violence is evil, and not all evil involves violence. At this point, an important distinction emerges. Stupidity and malevolence are not the same thing. Some people cause harm without understanding what they are doing. Others know very well what they are doing and still do it. Malevolence is closer to consciously taking pleasure in another person's suffering, feeling joy at someone else's loss, taking satisfaction in their downfall, enjoying their pain. This feeling is often linked to a deep sense of worthlessness. The person believes that others do not deserve what they have and tries to compensate for their own deprivation by pulling others down. These feelings are not foreign to human beings. Almost everyone experiences them from time to time. The real question is this: do these feelings make us evil? No, the existence of a feeling is not the same as acting on it. Emotions such as jealousy, envy, and anger are human. Evil begins when these emotions are consciously turned into action for the sake of pleasure. Goodness stands in a very different place. Being good is demanding. It has to be learned. It has to be practiced. It takes time to become a habit. Moreover, goodness rarely provides immediate pleasure. Its reward is delayed, spread over the long term. It may offer a sense of meaning across a lifetime, but it does not provide instant gratification. With evil, the situation is the opposite. Evil provides immediate pleasure. It creates a sense of power. It gives a feeling of domination. That is why being evil often requires no special effort. When given the opportunity, people can easily behave badly. At this point, a difficult question arises. Can children commit evil? Some cases make this question extremely hard to answer. Even when family histories, environmental conditions, and brain structures are examined, sometimes no clear explanation can be found. This shows us that evil does not always have to be learned or planned, but that does not mean it is innocent. When war, violence, and extreme threats are involved, the picture becomes even more complicated. A person under a threat to survival may do things they would never do under normal circumstances. At this point, actions must be distinguished from evil. Reflexive behaviours aimed at survival cannot be placed in the same category as conscious, planned, pleasure-driven acts. For much of human history, the concept of evil as we understand it today did not exist. In hunter-gatherer societies, the primary concern was hunger and survival. If people were not hungry, they did not try to forcibly take what belonged to others. Since there were no rigid restrictions on sexuality, many forms of violence that we now associate with evil did not emerge. Evil became more visible largely with the transition to settled life, the emergence of property, hierarchy, and power. Power is one of the strongest triggers of evil, because power creates the possibility of acting without paying a price. When a person believes they will not have to pay a cost for their actions, the likelihood of behaving badly increases. That is why what restrains evil is not moral purity, but the mechanism of consequences. Fear of punishment alone is not sufficient, but it is a starting point. Over time, this external control is internalized and becomes conscience. What happens if this internalization does not occur? Impulses become uncontrollable. A person may know that what they are doing is wrong and still be unable to stop themselves. In this case, evil is no longer a choice but an uncontrolled behaviour. This leads us to a fundamental realisation: human nature is not good. Human nature is raw. Being good is learned. Being bad requires no learning. For this reason, ethics, law, education, and social regulation are vital. Where there are no consequences, evil grows stronger. Where consequences exist, people begin to question their behaviour. There is a fine line here. Imposing consequences is not the same as evil. A measured consequence applied to prevent the repetition of a harmful behaviour is not evil. But when consequences are imposed to derive pleasure, to humiliate, or to display power, they turn into evil. In the end, we must accept this truth. When given the opportunity, we are all candidates for being evil. What stops us is often not the goodness within us, but the price we would have to pay. That is why goodness is difficult. It is demanding, it is boring, and yet it is precisely what makes us human.